Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everyone, Tracy here from Keto and Crime. Thank you so much to every single one of my patrons and channel members. You make this possible. And you're one of the reasons I do this. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if I haven't said it before, thank you. I'll sing it. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with me and letting me geek out, not making fun of me like a lot of other people do, because I like weird stuff about crime and dark history. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to Keto and Crime, and I've got an old friend here, the 𝐿-Mom.
Hi.
We are doing a very special discussion on Mormonism and fraud, especially those associated with multi-level marketing. And I know that the 𝐿-Mom has some things that she wants to clarify before we jump into this discussion. So I'll throw it over to her and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so just a little disclaimer. The Mormon Church, or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they do have a policy book. They've been updating it for the last couple of years. And in the 2021 update, they did start including affinity fraud and a couple other things, because they did finally, in my opinion, recognize it's a problem and that they have a lot of members that are getting taken advantage of by their fellow members, because there's this unfortunate vulnerability that comes in the comes with the culture. But they did include that. So Mormon leaders have taken a stance on affinity fraud. They don't believe that it's right to do. So I just want to clarify that because we might get some questions.
All right. Well, one thing I want to say when it comes to Mormonism, particularly the state of Utah. Now, I know LDS members are spread over Utah, Idaho, Arizona, California, and probably Oregon and Washington too, as well as Colorado just a little bit. But mainly, we're going to be dealing with Utah tonight, right?
Yes, Utah culture, Utah Mormonism culture. So I know if you grew up Mormon in Ohio, it may not apply to you. We actually, there is another YouTube channel, they're called Jordan and McKay. They use the word Mormidor for Idaho, Utah, and Arizona. And I think it's perfect. I was like, I have to adopt that because it is absolutely the perfect way to describe it. So
absolutely. Well, I was shocked at the amount of MLMs that not only operate in Utah, well, they operate all over, but are based in Utah. And that is because of, and you being, knowing Utah government so well, due to Senate Bill 182, that basically in 2005 shot down pretty much all anti-MLM rules in Utah, that basically said if it was a product-based MLM, they could have free range, pretty much.
Yeah, the legislature is very friendly to MLMs. Some of them are involved in MLMs, and they're pro-business anyway. We have low tax rates. Utah is a very attractive place for businesses, which has its pluses and its negatives, or pluses and minuses. But especially toward MLMs, where a lot of the legislators hang out in those same circles. There's I can't really explain it. You wouldn't really understand unless you're in that world. But yeah, they tend to be very favorable, and to a point where it hurts people like you and I. Mostly it hurts that Mormon housewife who wants to stay home because that's what the culture wants her to do, or what she feels she needs to do. And she can't quite make ends meet. And so someone says, hey, I sell Pampered Chef, Scentsy, Melaleuca, doTERRA, Tahitian Noni.
Young Living. Oh, well, let's just go over the ones
Young
that are-
Living. Young Living. I have
Yeah.
stories about that lady.
There are 14 MLMs based in Utah. ASEA, doTERRA, Lifanage, Mona V, Morinda, New Skin, Nature Sunshine, Protandium, Sunrider, USANA, Wake Up Now, 𝐜𝐚𝐬𝐬, Young Living, and Unique.
And there's actually more, and a lot, and some of them, I'm not completely positive, but I thought Melaleuca started in Utah, or it split and went, because I believe Melaleuca used to own Tahitian Noni or something. They've changed hands a little bit, changed names, stuff like that. I mean, we know that Lula Rowe, I never know that they lived in California,
Right.
but clearly he's just like Joseph Smith. So, I mean, I was like,
I believe Young Living is the one that almost drowned a child, or did drown a child, the owner, like in some weird healing ceremony. I believe that was him. I'll have to check my data on that, and if I'm correct, I'll do a video on it.
yeah, the
But there was
doctor
one-
who's not a doctor.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
he's not now, but he was
Yeah.
a doctor who's not a doctor, who was not a doctor. I think he died. But when I worked in the corporate world, we dealt with a lot of MLMs. I had MLMs that were my customers. And yes, the Young Living crowd is very into naturopathy, and the account rep for them was just like, that lady's nuts. He was just like, every time I go in there, I'm just like,
Now, disclaimer, you all know my opinion on homeopathic and naturopathic medicine. I've done a whole video on it. I'm not a fan, but I also don't want to offend anybody that, you know, is a chiropractor or some type of homeopathic medicine that has some basis in reality. But essential oils, Young Living, that's complete cuckoo.
it is. The only thing I will say, because I feel the same way. I think that there are some things like
Right.
that, like some merit to some things.
Oh, yeah.
But the way it is, no. But
Vitamin therapy, totally into vitamin therapy. You know,
Yeah.
vitamins can fix some things, but chiropractic, okay, for certain things. But beyond that, you really have to prove it to me.
yeah, and I do have one story where a product worked, and that's with doTERRA, because what happens a lot is that people will sell stuff to get it cheaper. And so I had a friend when my daughter was a dancer. She sold. She was a rep for doTERRA, which was like the latest and greatest back then. And my daughter came down. She had a solo competition, and those cost. This sounds terrible, but those cost a lot of money to enter. And it's a lot. And she was sick. And I was like, I think we're going to have to cancel. I don't think you're going to be able to dance. And my friend said, just try this. Like, I can't even remember what it was. If we rubbed it on her feet or her forehead, or maybe it was a pill. I don't know what it was. She's like, just try it. I swear it'll work. I was like, sure. What if it makes her feel better? I don't care. She looks miserable. And it worked long enough. She got up, she danced like she'd never danced in her life. She actually won. That's the one competition she won. And then she fell asleep for 3 days.
Sounds like something that my parents used to give us. Now, I'm sure you're Gen X too, so you may have heard of it. It was called Paragarc, and it's actually like 1 or 2% opium. And it's illegal now, of course. But they used to give that to us for just about everything. I realized that it didn't really have any medicinal effect other than just knocked you out.
I remember that my parents just always stuck with Benadryl. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe that it was the best she ever danced. She doesn't dance anymore, but so I was like, well, I got to give it to him that way. I sold 𝐼𝐸𝐸, which means I bought a lot of 𝐼𝐸𝐸.
See,
I never actually sold anything. I sold.
No, go ahead. I was just about most of these product-based MLMs, any MLM really, you don't make your money as a salesperson. You make your money recruiting other people to sell and recruit under you. That's why it's a pyramid scheme. If you have the top people on top are making a lot of money, and as you get lower, the money gets less and less and less.
Well, and the markets get oversaturated because then everybody in the ward, if you're the first person in the ward to set it up, then you are golden. But I did 𝐸𝐸𝐸, I did Stampin' Up, which means I bought a lot of stamps. I'm not like a person that builds my network. Like I don't like being pushy, and those type of, businesses, I guess is what people call them, but they're their business. You have to be pushy or you're not going to get your commission, which is crap anyway.
Yeah. The only MLM that I think was even remotely legitimate, and I remember because there was literally, my mom always bought her stuff from the Avon lady. I think of all of them, Avon probably is the most legitimate. I don't really know how much money Avon ladies actually make, but I know mom bought. We had that freaking deodorant they sold. We had like stacks and stacks of that stuff.
Oh, I just remember getting like the catalog because the Avon lady would drop it off, and hang it on your door. And I would just like look through it. I don't even know if my mom ever bought any, but I would agree with you on that, and knowing nothing about them or their business practices, but that was around for, I think it's still around, but it's been
is
a long time.
Mary Kay too, I think is fairly legitimate, but those are both cosmetics and skincare. So
yeah, I mean, it's overpriced. The thing with Mary Kay is that I believe you can sell back your inventory. It's a lower risk one than a lot of the other ones. And so that's how they get people in though. And then before you know it, your friend has spent $4,000 on product and she's like, but will you please buy mascara from me? And I'm like, no.
It clumps. I don't like it.
It's the same Unique. I had friends that sold Unique when it came out. And there were a lot of problems with those products. And they run this foundation. I'm gonna get sued. So before I say anything else, I'm just gonna say this is just all opinion. This is not fact. Like
personal experience.
It's just me talking because they aren't a little too happy, these companies. But if you use Unique and love it, right on. If you take Melaleuca or do whatever, right on. If you do Norwex, whatever, go for it. I still have all my 𝐸𝐸𝐸 stuff. So I'm not knocking anybody that has participated and done well at a reasonable level. I think it's really the structure and the pressure that is put, and that's what I noticed when I sold MLM products. And I think everybody in Utah has sold at least one. Everybody has signed up to sell at least one MLM. I'm convinced. There's a YouTube video a long time ago I watched, and it's like stuff Mormons say. And it's like, it's hilarious. It's like these 3 Mormon women, and part of it, there's a part where they're like, it's just like going into scenes, just like stuff like that. And one of the videos is her going, hi, would you like to try like this product? And then like knocking on the door, like in between, because it's just so ingrained in the culture here. And it's so hard to tell people no. I really have spent way too much money on MLM products, just wanting my friends to be able to make some money, but they never made any money either. Just like I never made any money. Yep. But it's sad.
It is. And why do you think, Well, I know that Utah is very friendly to these types of businesses, and they obviously have laws, or at least the product-based ones are pretty much free range. But why do you think there's so much pressure on these Mormon housewives? And I don't mean, I have all the respect in the world for housewives. I'm not trying to say that being a stay-at-home mom is a bad thing. I think just with the Mormon religion, it tends to be more prevalent than it
Mhm.
does in a lot of different religions. So why do you think they're so susceptible to this? I mean,
Yeah, I think there are a few reasons. One, money, because Utah doesn't have high wages in the first place. And so when you quit your job to stay home and you're living on one income, it's like, oh crap, like we got to eat. And so I think that pulls people in because they're told, hey, you can sign up for this and just work a few hours a week and sell this product and you'll be doing just great. Like this can be your fun money. This can be just extra money, or, you know, they sell you this like fantasy and you just fall for it because the people that are selling it to you are your friends or your fellow ward members. And that is why they thrive, because there's very much that vulnerability in the culture is to trust more than maybe someone is deserving of trust.
Mhm.
And so I think people automatically assume, hey, this is the Relief Society president. Like, she thinks I can sell this. She's not going to tell me, that I can do something that's going to harm me or my family. Like, I just have to have faith and make it work. And that's the other thing. There is another cultural ingrained element or whatever, where Mormonism really has this almost like the Protestant work ethic or Reformation type of thing, manifest destiny, stuff like that. It really has this feeling of, if you do everything right, pay your tithing, go to church, say your prayers, if you live your life the way you're supposed to be living according to the church's standards, then you will benefit financially. And that is very much a thing in Utah. Very much.
Wow. So, and then the problem comes in when, like you said, it gets oversaturated and you've got literally half the women in one church or
Right?
one temp or selling the same product.
Yeah.
And does the churches and wards ever step in, like some of the elders, do they ever step in and stop any of this?
I don't think so. I think they're relatively hands off unless it has to do with or no pay or stuff like that. Because or no pay is like a huge issue in Utah. It's a public health crisis, apparently. Like, we actually passed a bill declaring it that.
About what now?
Or no pay. I'm
Or
not
no-
saying it because I know that you like, I'm not monetized, so I don't have to watch my mouth as much.
Right. Oh, okay. I was like, wow. Wow. I didn't realize that was a problem among Mormons in Utah.
Yeah, I mean, Mormons were the number one consumer of Ashley Madison. It was married Mormon men.
I had no idea about that statistic. I know that the greatest consumers of online orno tend to be in the Southeast, in the Bible Belt. So I knew it was kind of a problem here, but
I think oppression, or repression, having to repress your feelings or your sexuality or like your desire because of your religious standards, just has the opposite effect for a lot of people.
So do you think that sort of thing kind of bleeds over with the MLMs? Because there's been plenty of, media attention and YouTube attention, social media influencer attention on how bad MLMs can be for individuals and families. So if they turn a blind eye to that, are they also turning a blind eye to the fraud that goes along with MLMs?
I think so. I think that's why the church had to put it in a policy book, because they were like, wait a minute, This is a big problem where they were in the past, or they've traditionally been very hands off when it comes to that stuff, you know, very much like, just give us your tithing, and like, we don't, you know, that's not our business, I think, type of mindset. I almost wonder, I'm like, I wonder if a general authority's wife got swindled. And so they were like, we got to put that in the policy book now. Like,
Or maybe he's mad because he has like, I don't know, 500 cases of unique sitting in his garage.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, she said she could sell it. And that could actually be because a lot of these companies require like these big deposits, like you buy your kit, right? Like,
yeah, and the kits are anywhere from $500 to $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, Scentsy was cheap. I think my Scentsy kit was only like $100. It was like a special. So I feel like even though Scentsy's like commission rate is really crappy, like they're not as predatory, but I still never sold a thing. And then they kicked me off. They actually kick you out. Like if you don't sell enough, like if you don't sell a certain level within 3 months, you get an email that's like, we've removed your privileges.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least they're honest to a certain degree, you know?
Yeah.
But think about it. These companies, their customers are their sales reps. Those are the only people really buying their product.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So it's just, I don't even understand why they're still legal in the US. Pyramid schemes have been deemed illegal for years, and this is essentially a pyramid scheme. It's just has a product attached to it. That's the only difference.
They just they just are able to get around things. There's a lot of lobbying. I wouldn't say that there's so much lobbying in Utah because it doesn't necessarily need to have a lot of lobbying behind it. So I don't see like a ton of lobbying, but the other thing is because those businesses, we have USANA Amphitheater, which is a huge venue, and we have other buildings or different venues named after these companies because they put out the money. And so they don't really need to necessarily lobby because they're like, hey, you guys want our tax money, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, you want this cool venue. And I think some of it, you know, during the Olympics, I think that helped this flourish a little bit because they did spend money on that.
Well, do Mormon husbands actually put that much pressure on their wives to help earn income from the beginning? And why do you think they're so quick to turn to these MLMs, other than trust of the people in their ward, instead of going to like a legitimate online job, remote, work from home job?
Well, I mean, Utah doesn't have a lot of remote jobs. It's actually disappointing for people like me who are like, I just want to work remotely. I should be able to. And maybe I will once I'm finally done with school, if that ever happens. But so Utah doesn't have a lot of remote work opportunities, even though we do have a low unemployment rate. I don't know if necessarily like Mormon husbands, well, I would say what happens is it's just like an expected, this is for the stricter Mormons. Mormonism is on a spectrum. I guess we should say that too, that Mormonism is on a spectrum. There are very progressive Mormons where, the mom is the attorney and the dad stays home, or
right.
So I'm talking about more traditional Mormon families, more cultural. The people that I know and who I've been around as someone that grew up in the church and has lived in Salt Lake City my entire life. But I think there is this, like, I'm just going to use like family members as an example. So it was never an expectation that one of my family members were to work after she had her child. Like, it was just like, oh, you're going to have a baby, which means you're going to stay home. And I think but the expectation is, but we need to have all these things and now we can't afford them because it's very materialistic too, and very much keeping up with the Joneses. And again, the more faithful you are, the more successful you'll be. So we want to show we're successful, right? Even though we can barely afford food. And by the way, before we even buy food, we have to pay our 10% tithing. Like general authorities have actually said that you buy or you pay your tithing before you buy your food, which I think is kind of counterproductive. Or
Yeah, I've always thought food, housing, utilities, then everything else.
Yeah. And their feeling is you pay that first. And then I guess if you need assistance from the church, they can provide that assistance for you.
Oh, they'll give your money back.
Usually it depends on the bishop, but actually usually what they'll do is they'll just like pay a few bills for you, or you can get food at the bishop's storehouse because they have like the stores, but you usually have to volunteer at the bishop's storehouse, or you used to in the past. The food really sucks, I know, because I've had to eat it.
Ain't it like prepper food pretty much?
Yeah, it's like prepper food, but like not, yeah, it's definitely, I can't even remember what it was that I had to eat. I think it was like gelatin. It was supposed to be Jello, and it was horrible, but I mean, we couldn't afford to eat. So
well, and preface, everybody knows that I'm in favor of some degree of prepping after what we just went through with the pandemic. I believe you should have at least 3 months worth of supplies at your house if you possibly can. So I think that's one thing the Mormons do really well. But
yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of food storage right now. I don't know if I would say 3 months. I think where the prepping becomes a problem is when people go through their savings or put it on credit cards, and it's thousands of dollars. And like I went to this Book of Mormon evidence event, like basically, and so a lot of the prepper companies were there, and you know, they have like this huge water storage thing. I was like, oh, that looks cool. How much is that? He's like, $2,000. I'm like, okay, bye-bye now. Like,
yeah. Oh, I know what you're saying.
Almost, yeah, it's almost like an MLM too.
Yeah.
Really, I'm surprised they don't have more.
Oh yeah, I'm just talking about, you know, extra cans of food, that sort of thing.
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm a big one. If you can afford to buy a few extra cans, buy a few extra cans, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. Like, I'll get 2 things of toilet paper at Costco, you know, or I'll pick up 2 shampoos. Yeah. So I always kind of have one. So it's that is a good quality to have. Be prepared for things if you can do it to a normal degree, and not like when I was a kid. I think the extreme preppers do this now. But like when I was a kid, it was, you were supposed to have 7 years. Yeah.
That stuff, it's going to go bad eventually, and you got to replace it all. I mean, it's not eternal.
Yeah. You were supposed to cycle it through.
So you have to eat the stuff.
Yeah. My grandparents had a lot of food storage. So we would go shopping in the food storage pantry all the time as kids. It'd be a grocery store. We'd be like, oh,
wow.
These. And yeah, but that was because of the tribulations.
Yeah.
But I think also people were spending so much money that then they were like, well, you really only need a year. Like, let's calm down, everyone. So they have noticed. But as far as the MLMs, I think that it's not really an expectation that you're not going to work once you have your children. It's just kind of one of those accepted things. A lot more people work now, like a lot. I would say more people work than don't work. Like when I had my kids, I would say it's probably half and half, you know, depending on, but the goal is to not have to work because you're supposed to be raising your children instead of doing that. You know, Mormonism is very big on putting your family first and providing for your family. And I think that can also be problematic as far as the materialism. Like, we want to provide for our kids, want to provide a family. So we need a new boat, even though we can't afford it. But if you'll go sell Scentsy, you'll make $2. I think I actually got a paycheck for $2.
Oh my God.
But there's also this this flexibility that MLMs offer, and I think that's a big attraction for women too. That was what it was for me, because I was like, I have a child with special needs, and I can't just go into an office and then have to leave if he has a meltdown, or, you know, if we have occupational therapy. So for me, it was like, I can do this and still take care of him, and I don't have to have a set schedule. And I think for Mormon women who have more children than people who are non-Mormon traditionally, it's attractive because you've got one kid you're taking to soccer, one kid you're taking to piano, one kid you're taking to dance. And it's hard. It actually is hard to work when you have multiple kids that all are doing activities.
Yeah. And you have to pay for those activities. So unless you're the family from Big Love, where they own a chain of home improvement stores and are mega wealthy, it's not easy to do that on one income, especially now.
Do you know that show actually was modeled after like a few of the prominent polygamous families, like the Kingston family? They own all the True Values. Like that,
I did not know that it was based on possibly actual families.
Yeah. And then I think the LeBarons, like that feud towards the end.
Yeah.
I think that's based on the LeBarons. And then there were like a couple other things. I was like, oh, I think that's based on this sect or whatever.
So even though polygamy is kind of frowned upon by the traditional church, it's just kind of everybody turns a blind eye to it, sort of.
No, Mormons are very adamant that they not be associated with polygamy. Like, if you even bring it up, it's awkward, because they consider polygamists now apostates.
I did not know that, because I know that it was a fictional show, of course, but they seem to be pretty mainstream LDS, even though they kept it all kind of on the down low, even though their parents were in fringe groups, kind of like the FLDS. But
yeah, and they wore sleeveless stuff. I was like, I don't think so. When they showed the one wife in the temple, I was like, that's close. Like, I was actually like, oh, I mean, under the banner of heaven, like that's already hitting the fan. There's already emails going out about that one and statements being made. But
a former Mormon was on the writing staff of that show. I'm absolutely positive that there were Mormons that wrote that show.
Dustin Lance Black did grow up Mormon, and then there are some other people that consulted, and but it's based on the book that John 𝐻𝐞𝐿 wrote, and he did extensive research, and he actually used, I don't have the book with me. He actually used resources from actual Mormon historians, which is what I try to stick to in my research. But he referred to like Fawn Brody and Juanita Brooks, two very famous Mormon historians. So it's based on, so far I think it's pretty good, pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's not going to be 100%. Nothing ever is.
Well, nothing is. You can't, everybody's experience is a little different.
Yeah.
But I believe one of those wives did get involved in an MLM in the course of the show, ironically, as I recall.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And because it was funny. I'm pretty sure, because it would be funny to watch, because it's so common. You always have a friend that sells an MLM product, always, and you're always getting calls and invitations. And like, this was the email I got that I have to share. I'm going to just share parts of it. But so we planned on doing this, and then I get this email. I don't know how they got my name. It's from my son's, someone got the email list at my son's school. So just to preface this, my son goes to a special school for kids with special needs. When you are a special needs parent, your time is limited, your funding is limited, especially when you have a child on the spectrum and your insurance doesn't cover a lot of different therapies that they need, and it's time consuming. So the parents that have children that go to this school, we're maxed out. We have enough to worry about.
Can't even imagine special needs. I mean, I can't imagine any children at all. That's why I chose to remain childless. But I can't even imagine.
Yeah. I mean, my son is higher on the spectrum. So he's verbal and everything. And sometimes it can be good and it can be bad because people don't always understand why because they look normal. But
Right.
yeah, so I got this, and this is just so common to get. You're always getting these things, not really from a school mailing list. I'm a little pissed about that, but you're always getting these like invitations, and they always read the same. This would be a great opportunity for any of you that could take advantage of it. Can I give you a special day for free as an alumni mom of blank school? My heart is turned to all of you women who are living with this journey with these incredible kiddos. You have a lot on your plate and give so much. Would you be open to a special day to fill your well? I have been living this journey for 22 years and know the need to have a girls' day out. And then they talk about how it's like this seminar thing. I couldn't really figure out what product it was or if there was a product, but I was like, this is the perfect example.
Probably
of what
a Tupperware party.
Yeah, or something. But I mean, it was just like, I have to be honest, I'm so grateful for what blank school has done for my children. I mean, just like love bombing, just like, I'm one of you. And I just was like, are you? Because I don't think what you're doing is very ethical to reach out to parents that, in my opinion, are vulnerable.
Using your children's, you know, situations to sell a product or to recruit people in to sell a product. I mean, I've had some experiences with Hun bots. That's what they're affectionately known as on YouTube. And it's usually somebody from my high school that didn't give me the time of day in high school because they were popular and I wasn't. You know, hey, you look great. I'm just like, no, block. You know, trying to recruit me into selling some stuff. Yeah, hey girl. I'm like, I didn't talk to you in high school.
Yeah, and I love it when it's a nutritional product or a weight loss product, because I'm like,
you say I'm fat, that I need.
Yeah, or that like, what are you trying to do? Like, this is
a little rundown. Yeah.
You know, but it happens. Like, that is another part of this, is that it's easier, I think, for these MLM, the upper MLM people. I don't even know what to call it, because I feel like you're kind of in the same boat until you get to a certain level.
Yeah, there's uplines and downlines. Anybody that is like higher up in the pyramid than you is considered your upline, and then you're their downline.
Yeah. So the upline, like, the uplines, I think that's another thing they use. You know, Utah has big family values. It's one of the things I still appreciate about the culture to a certain extent. But so these people, they know how to get you. You know what? Our daughters go to dance together. Can you come over and I am doing this party for my friend who, she's selling this. I'm just trying to help her out. But if you just want to come over, I mean, we're just going to have some, not real drinks, but do some snacks and get together, and it'll be fun. No big deal. Like, just come and hang out. And then you get there and it's like, do you want to sign up? No. Do you want to sign? You get asked 5 times, and before you know it, you're like, I'm a new rep.
I have people in my family that sell Pampered Chef, and they do okay with it. I mean, they're not like super mega, but their parties do okay. I mean, some of that stuff's pretty nice, but it's also very overpriced.
Yeah.
I sold 𝐻𝐞𝐭'𝐬 knives in college, door to door, but I still have a set of them that they work really well. I mean, those are decent knives, but I think those are the 2 milder forms of an MLM.
Yeah. I have Pampered Chef products. I didn't sell it, but I went to a Pampered Chef party. What haven't I gone to, or what haven't I been sold? Because I am that person that you can, like, they have me pegged. They're like, she'll buy something because she'll feel guilty. And it's true, I do. So I always buy something at these parties, what's funny is now they have those companies like True Romance or
Oh yeah,
and those still do well here.
the adult toys.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone to a couple of those, which is really awkward when you're
Those are
sitting there.
kind of fun. I guess it depends on who's hosting it, but that does well among Mormon women.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that Mormon women are normal women and they have urges, but I never thought that the church should be okay with that.
I'm sure they're not, but I think it's just another one of those MLMs where it's like, oh, I'm selling, oh, we can be, bad or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, but yeah, I know people, I don't know if I know anyone that's Mormon that actually sells it.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone that, like, when I've been to those parties, and I've only been to 2 or 3, that it's someone that's, I'm not sure if they're Mormon, but they're usually held by my Mormon friends.
That's neat.
Yeah. So it's a lot of that. I mean, another thing that's really, I think, unique about Mormons is this social network.
Uh-huh.
So, like, I have a family member who isn't even a nice person. she's like she's not as nice as me, and I'm not very nice. But she has like 600 Facebook friends because you have a built-in social network in your ward. You have a built-in friend group, built-in network. And so that's the other thing that I notice is they will also help out fellow members. And so that also breeds kind of a closeness and a vulnerability. And so that's something that now out of the religion, it's kind of impressive, and it makes you feel bad I am not on Facebook. I don't do social media, but you're kind of like, wow, I have 200 and like, you have 600, you're not even nice. Like, but they do, like, you always know someone to go to. And that's again where the fraud comes in, because this guy in my ward, he's a mortgage officer. This lady in my relief society, she's a realtor. You always know someone that's in some type of business. And then there's like the Primerica stuff and all of this in addition to the MLMs. And so it just breeds this environment where, there's also this thing called like the discerning of spirits, power of discernment, which is basically the gift to tell good from evil, which is what Mormon leaders are supposed to have. They're supposed to consult before they call people. So if you get a church calling, it's because, that the leader was inspired and that the power of discernment determined that you were not a murderer, except if you're Chad and Laurie. And all the other crew. But so there's that too, where it's like, oh, they're not gonna screw us over. Like, they're in our word. I've known this guy for 5 years. Relax. They're not gonna screw us over. And that actually stems from, I'm reading this book about the early days of the church that's written by a Mormon historian, Christopher Blythe. I always have to say who it is because people are like, you're just reading anti-Mormon stuff. I promise I don't. But anyway, he writes that this kind of stems from the early days of the church when Mormons dealt with Mormons. It was a closed economy, basically, when they would move to these settlements, when they moved Kirtland and then Nauvoo, Missouri, all of those before coming to Utah, they would set up these kind of closed economic systems. Right. And so Mormons dealt with Mormons sold to Mormons. And that it was actually what pissed a lot of the townspeople off. That's especially what happened in Missouri. But it kind of has remained. Even now in Utah, there's definitely more of like, well, I'm going to buy something if are they Mormon? Okay. I'm going to associate with Mormons because they understand me and the non-Mormon doesn't.
Well, you can look at like the Jewish community in New York. It was very much like that for them for many years. They only dealt with other Jewish neighborhoods, and you see larger cities where that happens. And I think maybe the Mormons just kind of took that, because wasn't Joseph Smith from New York? So,
Yes.
he probably was used to there being a Puerto Rican neighborhood and an Italian neighborhood and a Polish
Oh no, they
neighborhood.
lived out in
Well, I knew
the
they lived up, but
they live out in the farm. They were like
yeah.
rural treasure diggers, like
Rural.
magical folk.
But a lot of a lot of cultures do that. But the difference between, I think, the Mormons and others is that other people do come in and they will do business with other people, whereas the Mormons probably, as you said, don't or didn't.
Didn't. I would say didn't. Now they do. They certainly love to make profits. So
Right.
they definitely will deal with you as long as you're willing to spend money on what they have to sell you. But yeah, it's I think it's definitely still somewhat ingrained, and I think that contributes to this MLM or these cases of fraud, because you deal with your own kind of like thing. It kind of reminds me almost of Black Wall Street. I don't know if you're familiar with Black Wall Street, but only the community in Greenwood, they were forced into a closed economy. So it wasn't their choice, but they flourished big time. And then that's when they burned them down, or burned their homes down and burned the whole town to the ground, because white people were like, wait a minute, you're not allowed to have anything. I think that's kind of what happened with Utah. Like they dealt with each other, that had that closed economy, and then Utah does well economically. We really do. And I say that as someone that studied economics. Like, I can't knock the state for that, even though I disagree with the way money is distributed a lot of times. But
I think I'm researching Black Wall Street for a future video, and there was some crimes associated with not condoning what happened there, but I think there's a little bit more to that story. But it's like, what happened there was terrible.
A black man bumped into a white female.
And then there was some rape allegations or attack allegations, and then it just kind of spiraled from there.
There's a couple books I have on it. The Burning by Tim something. That was my favorite book, but I have like three or four, because I really looked into it. But it was this poor guy just bumped into this lady, and I don't even think she made it into a rape allegation. I think it was
somebody that saw them like come out of the elevator together and pissed somebody off.
And then that just
and then
escalated.
He ran, as you would.
And
ended up
being black in the South.
Getting chased. So
but I mean, it kind of reminds me of that, and that probably contributed to that. I know back years ago, I would say even in the 80s and 90s, it was still a lot like that. We only had one family in our entire ward that was a Mormon.
Wow.
One family. And a ward is about 400.
So that's like a neighborhood or a small town city.
A few blocks. So I want to say that they divide them now. I want to say it's like 400 to a ward, but that seems a little bit too high. But it's basically just
overall, if you have two Mormons here, and in between them in their houses is a non-Mormon family, how do they generally treat the non-Mormon family?
Well, they send missionaries over, of course.
Oh, of course. But
generally, they're pretty nice people. That's what actually makes it hard sometimes for me on my channel, because I'm like, I know that there are really nice people, but where are you people coming from? Like, you people who come in here and you come in my comments and you say horrible things and you sometimes threaten me. like, where are you? So I can like mark the neighborhoods of where the bad Mormons are, because most of the time, you know, they're nice. I would say like, when I got married really young, and I got married to a non-Mormon.
Okay.
And I was still Mormon. He wanted nothing to do with it. And I was like, I can change him, but I couldn't. And so when we would move into a neighborhood, we were usually the non-Mormons, or I was the inactive Mormon on the street. So usually what happened is you meet your neighbors and then like, oh, are you active? And no, I don't go to church. And then the missionaries show up at your door, or the Relief Society shows up with cookies. You get like these little neighbor gifts for Christmas. They're usually pretty good at that, or they'll check on you just to say hi. So it's a good kind of community feeling, but at the same time, there's also this, you get left out of things too, because they all know each other. So they congregate together. I remember once, one thing that Mormon women love to do is go walking at 5 a.m. Like before they, like, I swear every neighborhood I've ever lived in.
Well, is it Utah, Colorado, Idaho? They're all known for being very physically fit people.
Yeah. So
and
like, yeah, we would go on this, that like I was out in my yard one day, and this girl or lady came up to me, and we started talking because our girls were the same age. And she's like, oh, you know, a few of us, we go walking every morning at like 5:30. And I was like, oh, I would like to do that. I'm new in this neighborhood, and so it might be fun to meet people. And that was back when I worked out. And so I did, and this is what usually happens is they're very friendly, but they don't understand that they are talking amongst themselves, and you're just kind of sitting there because they're talking about all the church things, like brother so-and-so and sister so-and-so. And so I think I only went like twice, because I was like, all right, like this is, I'm just sitting here listening to word gossip.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, and I've had the same experience on my channel when I cover the Daybell case, or when I did my video on LDS or FLDS. Most of I gathered quite a few Mormon subscribers, and they were all really nice people. I mean, the most derogatory things that they would say is, I'll pray for you. You know, I feel bad that you don't believe in anything at all. I'll pray for you. You know, that's the worst that they ever said.
That is not the worst that they've said to me.
I know, you've sent me some of yours, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's actually really sad, because I sit there and I go, because I get a lot of like, you have a personal vendetta against the church, or you're attacking the church personally. And my response to that I never come up with is, well, no, but you're certainly not helping the case. Like, you're certainly not making the church look good, because you're on my channel harassing me, telling me I'm terrible, I don't know what I'm talking about, and all of these things.
You're a bigger threat than me. I mean, I cover mainly true crime, some religions, but it's a smicking of the iceberg. You know Mormonism so well, and you know the culture. You're immersed in it. I think you're a bigger threat than I am.
I have gotten some feedback from other YouTubers saying, yeah, you're a threat.
Yeah.
And I think it's just to people that they want this perfect narrative of the church. They want it to stick, and they don't want any negative. I mean, it's a whole cultural thing, but I think one of the biggest weaknesses that I see is this inability to admit that people are flawed and the church is flawed. Every organization is flawed. Every person is flawed.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, when I used to be a Pentecostal, they would have negative things to say about other religions, particularly like Scientology and Jehovah's Witness and Mormons. And, I would just think to myself, we believe in a virgin birth, a talking snake, a talking donkey, all this stuff, and yet you're criticizing them. Look at what you believe.
Well, and that is something that I've always found funny, and I say it a lot on my channel, is like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. The big deal is that it can be problematic when you deny it.
Yeah.
Like when you don't deal
There's
with
weirdness. It's like when, even in Islam, they believe that Muhammad, who was illiterate, was able to miraculously remember the entire Quran and then dictate it to somebody who wrote it down for him.
Well, that's
Come
what they
on.
did. That's what Joseph Smith did.
Yeah, come on.
Only he
You
looked into a
know.
hat,
Yeah,
and a seer stone told him what to say,
yeah.
which changed from when I was a kid. Like, this is just one of those things. I was always told he was reading the golden plates, and someone on the other side was scribing for him. And now they're finally like, well, there's too much evidence. He actually was sticking his head in a hat and reading it to someone, reading the seer stone. He put the seer stone in the hat.
Yeah.
And I just think you gotta be upfront. Like, the internet's here, man. It's not going away, and you can't deny. You can't pull this apologetic stuff that seems to
all
happen.
religions have kooky beliefs. Every single one of them. Take it all the way back to, you know, Norse and Greek and Roman mythology. They all have kooky beliefs. Every single one of them. There's not a religion that doesn't. So quit pretending that yours is better than anyone else's.
Right. And that's what the Mormons do believe. They are the chosen people. It is God's chosen church, chosen gospel, and the one true church, the one true gospel. And so it's infallible. Right. Basically, is people think it's infallible because it's the one true gospel. Yep. And that was actually something that bothered me even from when I was a kid. When stories would change, I'd be like, but if it's the one true gospel, why would Joseph Smith, like the polygamy thing, that bugged me when I was a kid, because I would ask questions. I was like, why don't we do polygamy anymore if it's in the Doctrine and Covenants? Well, it wasn't the right time. We'll do it in heaven. It'll be explained to us later. Or why did we have
the Old Testament too? the regular Old Testament?
Even when you ask, like, oh, why is there polygamy? At least when I was a kid, oh, because so many men died on the Pioneer Trail that other men, they married their wives to take care of them, so they just wanted to take care of these widows. And I wasn't the only one. Yeah, I was not the only one sold that one. I think there's a podcaster I don't know if it's a Mormon podcast, but they said that, like, they were told that too. That was the answer, I guess, in the 80s that they gave. They have a different answer for every decade.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Pioneer Trail, I recently did a video on the Donner Party. And the Mormon Trail was actually one of the major trails from the east to the west that was safe, vetted, and you would get there if you used it. It was one of the three, along with the Oregon and the, I believe the California Trail was the other one. But, and of course, the Donner Party took none of them. But that's why most of them died. But I just think that was really, really interesting that the Mormons had an actual trail that other pioneers considered vetted and safe.
Oh, yeah, because there was so many of them coming out west.
Yeah.
So we had to make sure it was safe. They did kill people on it.
Well, yeah,
massacre, Bear River massacre.
Well, yeah, I mean, trails can't account for people shooting each other. But
like they did organized massacres.
Yeah.
But like those types of things, when they get hidden, that they just create problems, and that's why I talk about them. Plus, I think it's fascinating. I think Mormon history is very fascinating. History
in general is fascinating. I mean, I think this is a great country. I'm proud to be here, but we do have a very dark history, just like every civilization that has ever existed has a dark history. And all we can do is learn from it and quit trying to hide it, you know.
Exactly.
We learn from it. We get better from it, you know.
Yeah.
The answer is not reversing thousands of years of history. The answer is learning and doing better. That's right. That's the answer.
Not sticking your head in the sand.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's, I'm trying to think of what else I can say about MLMs.
They're bad. Stay away from them. They're bad.
They're bad. They take advantage of members of the church, the most vulnerable members of the church, people who are struggling financially and who are being taken advantage of by fellow ward members. And also, if it's a Mormon that founded the company, like that's also attractive. Do you know how many LuLaRoe, ugly ass LuLaRoe leggings I have seen in my life? I don't need to see any more with like a blowfish on the couche.
Were the founders of LuLaRoe Mormon?
Yes.
I did not know that. That's the one fact I did not know when I did a video on them. I was just criticizing their business practices. I didn't realize they were Mormon.
Yeah, no, they're Mormon, and that's why he compared himself to Joseph Smith.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Well, there have been a couple of crimes that had MLMs right up in the middle of them. The most well-known, of course, is Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander. They were both caught up in the prepaid legal services. I think it's called Legal Shield now, which has sold the prepaid lawyer services. And he was pretty highly placed. And the MLM had nothing to do with it. Had nothing to do with the murder, but I think it was interesting. They both were Mormon and they both worked for this MLM.
Yeah. I've thought about doing a video on that. Someone has said I should look into it more because apparently the behaviors of his friends in the courtroom like were kind of puzzling, and so people were trying to figure out like why, even though they had proof that he wasn't perfect, which none of us are. He wasn't. That his friends were like, no, he never did that. He would never do that. Nope. And I'm like, because in the Mormon religion, men are trusted more than women. It's just true.
Yeah.
It's true.
He had this reputation and he's a motivational speaker. He was highly placed in this company. He had this whole persona as this, I don't know, Tony Robbins kind of person that was perfect and never did anything wrong, even though he was a womanizer. He had messed with Jodi Arias the entire time and led her on, and she was crazy. Right. Absolutely. But I think he could have saved his own life if he had stopped messing with that. But he didn't. He kept on. He was messing with other women. No, he was far from perfect. And
that I'm not surprised at all, because that's the famous Mormon story of the convert. The convert that joins the church. I think he joined when he was young, though. He was like little, like grandparents.
He had a very bad. He didn't really have a relationship with his father. His mother was a drug addict. His grandparents rescued him from a trailer with no power, nothing, in a backyard that was half flooded, and in California, in Riverside, and rescued him. And they were Mormon, and they raised him in the Mormon church, and it became very, very important to him.
Right.
And he converted Jodi because he told her he was going to marry her, and then didn't.
Yeah, which is, I hate to say anything against someone that was brutally murdered, and it was not his fault at all, but that's kind of a dick thing to do. Someone. She joined a religion for him, and that happens a lot. I suspect sometimes that's possibly what happened to Charles Vallow. Is he fell in love with Lori because she wasn't always who we see, and she was Mormon, and you don't marry outside of your religion in Mormonism, and you're always told not to. And when I married outside of my religion, I was told, oh, you're going to end up leaving the church. And then I did, but not for 15 years and for a completely different reason. But, you are supposed to marry within the church. And his story is the perfect Mormon hero trope. And that sells.
What's your opinion on them seeking the death penalty for
her? Well, as far as the church goes, they take no official stance on the death penalty.
Right.
I am not a fan of the death penalty, only because I always have to say this. I think it's fiscally irresponsible. There is way too much data to show that the death penalty is by far more expensive than life in prison. I have friends that work at the Utah prison or have worked at the Utah prison. They're retired now. And the death row inmates get treated like better, I would say, because they're kind of on their own cell
they
block.
have a totally segregated cell block.
Which is nicer. There's less of them, so it's nicer. And
they get appeal after appeal after appeal. I mean, it
Right.
takes the average time that somebody spends on death row is 20 years.
Yeah, they'll die. There's a good chance you will die before you are executed.
Yeah.
And I also think it can be very overused. I did like a huge research project on it, and then you have people that get put on death row that like there is I can't remember his name, but he was down south, black man, who's actually special needs, and he was put away for murder. He didn't do it, and he spent 20 years on death row. And then they finally were like, oh, we forgot to look at this evidence. You can go now.
And a lot of places have it on the books that you can't sue the state if you are falsely convicted, which is just, I don't understand.
Able to.
So, but anyway, I was raised in the South, so death penalty was just part of it. I mean, Alabama had one of the most widely used electric chairs of all time. But so I was raised with it. I believe, just like a lot of things, it should be legal but rare, and only the most extreme, because there's some people that just should not be among us. Now, when it comes to Lori Vallow, as much as I hate her, I'm not entirely upset by it.
I have the opinion, if she is in the same place mentally where I believe she was, this woman believed wholeheartedly in these old doctrines. Then she is a martyr, and this is what she wants.
You think so?
Yes. If she's still in that mindset when she was sending those text messages, when she murdered those poor babies and her husband and Chud's wife, she 100% thinks she's a martyr right now.
Wow.
And that's why I was against it in their case, because I was not so much Chad, because I don't know if he would feel the same way. I don't know enough about him to really make that judgment, but I think Lori views herself, if those meds haven't changed anything, she is a martyr right now. She's being persecuted. This is actually good for her, because it shows she's doing the right thing. So when people are like, oh no, I hope she isn't in that place. And I hope she is literally on the toilet constantly right now going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is here. I'm actually gonna have to pay for these crimes. But I was not for it in her case just because of that. I was like, I don't want her to feel like she's a martyr.
Interesting. I didn't even realize that. I mean, if she's going to be punished more by sitting and thinking about what she did and not being martyrized, then no, let's put her in life in prison.
Yeah.
I want whatever's going to make her the most miserable.
Life in prison. Because she will have to wonder every day when the Lord is coming for her.
Yeah.
I mean, she already went in there thinking she was a translated being, and then found out she couldn't make the walk through walls. And so every day she's in there is going to take a hit at her full on faith. When people tell me, oh, this was not about, this woman believed this shit 100%. And just, she was weird even before then. Years before, people said, yes, she would say weird stuff. But in my opinion, I feel like Lori Daybell murdered Lori Vallow.
Yeah.
Because she was a good person at one point, or at least she portrayed a good person.
Yeah. Do you think she was already caught up in that own belief system even before she met Chad, wasn't she?
Yeah. I mean,
I think he added to it, but
yeah, I mean, they added some things, but really a lot of it is in old doctrine. I mean, if you go back to the discourses of Brigham Young, original writings of Joseph Smith, the first versions of the Book of Mormon, because there have been several, John Taylor, I mean, Chad Daybell ripped off John Taylor, but they all rip off John Taylor. I mean, Lori or Julie Rowe, but visions were very common in the early days. They just took it, they applied it for now and for
modern times.
Yeah, but I remember I was on Web Sleuths and Trisha asked me, like, I said, yeah, I'm going to try and start getting into the doomsday beliefs because people want to know about those. And she's like, oh, I bet it's so different. And I was like, no, actually the doomsday beliefs are.
I would love to see a concise video about the Mormon beliefs on end times. I know there's probably way more than one doctrine on that, but at least I would love to hear a concise breakdown of what the actual modern day LDS beliefs in the end times are. Because even among normal Protestants, it differs. I mean, there's a sequence of events that's kind of runs through it all, but there's still things that are quite different. Like some people believe that there is no rapture. Some people believe that the rapture comes after the tribulation, some before the tribulation. Some believes that there's this 1,000 years between the great tribulation and the final judgment. Others believe, no, it just happens. So it's very, very different, even among Protestant denominations.
I don't feel like it's so much like that among Mormons. I think there is more that's undiscussed now than like in the 80s. Like this, we were definitely doomsdayers in the 80s. Now I think they try and like distance. Last conference, not this April one, but in October, there was a talk on the second coming that disappeared from the church's website. Like I saw it come up and I was like, oh, I want to listen to that. And then the next day it was gone. So they were probably like, oh crap, the Daybell case. Yeah, we got to take that down. So there is more of like an avoidance, which is why I always try and like stick to the doctrine, to the scriptures, and explain it the way it is in the scriptures, rather than go off of that, because it's different for everyone. But at least if you tie it to the actual doctrine, like you can't deny that Joseph Smith throughout the Doctrine and Covenants talked about the second coming. Like people can always misinterpret and hide stuff that Brigham Young said. That's like the favorite thing people like to do. They're like, no, don't talk about it. Just about when he came to the Valley.
He was kind of an asshole, wasn't he? Very violent.
Yeah, very. Yeah, he not a good guy.
Very,
he also got. Also, when they talk about like the Adam God theory, they blame a lot on him too, though, that like came from Joseph Smith. So some of the stuff they credit with Brigham Young is actually stuff that came from Joseph Smith, like the Adam God theory, multiple mortal probations.
Yeah,
is in the same multiple mortal probations that Julie Rowe and those guys teach, but it does stem from that theory or that doctrine. It was actually a taught doctrine. But yeah, it's I think it's more similar. I just think it's been distanced as far as, well, honestly, I can't say that because you have two Mormon churches right now. You have the Chad and Lori Mormon Church, which is the traditional Mormon church, the church I grew up in. And then you have this more progressive church that wants to be mainstream Christian and wants to say like, oh yeah, we have the Book of Mormon, but we really want to stress the Bible. Or like, no, Three Kingdoms, we're not going to put that on our website. That makes us sound crazy. So there's like this tug of war right now. And that's why I honestly think like more traditional Mormons cannot deny, or anyone that grew up in the 80s or anyone that knows traditional Mormon doctrine before they started really whitewashing it once the internet got a hold of it. You cannot deny that this Chad and Lori, their beliefs are based in Mormonism. Like there's no way to deny that.
Yeah.
You could try, and people do on my channel all the time, but there's no way.
Well, that's what we get. No one is saying that the church condones what they did. No one is saying that. They're just
Right.
saying that the Mormon religion fed their beliefs, and then they had their own fringe beliefs. And
Right.
that's what led to these crimes. You could also say the same thing about the FLDS church and all the crap they do.
Yeah.
But those
I
are
always
beliefs of
bring up
Mormon.
Timothy
You know?
McVeigh.
Yeah.
I bring up Timothy McVeigh. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't see every buddy freaking out, but Mormons do have a persecution complex that comes from the pioneer days when they were persecuted, and that still does exist. It's ingrained. It's generational, and there is this tendency to, anytime someone says something that could even be taken negatively, it's like, don't attack the church. You're attacking the church. And it's like, no, I'm just saying that translated beings are Mormon doctrine.
The church has some responsibility for its what it teaches. It's just like when people say, well, you can't blame the whole Catholic Church for the behaviors of like the Medicis and the Borgias and even what goes on now with, you know, children in the church. I said, no, you can't blame every single Catholic, but I can blame the Catholic system and the stuff that they teach. I mean, it's been well known that the Pope will move around priests that do bad things and just move them away and protect them. Well known.
And that happens in the Mormon church too.
Yeah. I think it happens with all churches. They all cover things up. Every single one of them. Yeah,
because I get that people will bring that up, and I'll say SA is a huge issue in the Mormon church.
Yep.
And so don't say that it's not an issue and compare it to the Catholic Church, because I know about that from personal experience, from finding documents that they thought they hid, like 𝐼𝐸𝐸. It's the hiding it that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's the not willing to admit it. It's when the Lafferty murders were committed. We're not going to talk about the Lafferty murders. Well, guess what? A lot of us knew this was going to happen, because these spiritual gifts, or these, really spiritual gifts are problematic.
It's the Duggars. They are independent fundamentalist Baptists. What did they do? They covered up SA.
Right.
Every single church does it. Every single organization does it, religious or not.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the bad press.
Yeah. And I have started to tell people now, if you're upset about these murders, you can write to Chad and Lori. You can also go to your bishop and go to your leaders and say, what can we do in our ward to make sure this doesn't happen? Are we keeping an eye on people? Because people like Chad and Lori are going to church with their fellow Mormons every day. I mean, not murdering, but those more extreme believers, they're not their own separate cult.
No, I mean, look at 𝐼𝐸𝐸, that whole prepper network. Not saying that they're all like Lori and Chad, but some of the beliefs that Lori and Chad talked about on some of those message boards, other people agreed with. I mean,
I think a lot of Mormons.
Yeah, and a lot of them were Mormon. So a lot of people have those end time apocalyptic beliefs. And
I think a vow is just a place where it's just like a forum.
Yeah, it is.
And people wanted to turn it into the cult. Like they've wanted to create this cult.
Oh no, not a cult. It's just a place. But a lot of the people on there were mainstream LDS, and they believe the same things that Chad and Lori did. I looked at some of the message boards. The beliefs on there are freaky.
Yeah, and some of them come from doctrine.
Yeah.
And I can say that even Mormon scholars like Christopher Blythe, and I think Patrick Mason is at Utah State University, and Christopher Blythe is at BYU, and he's done a lot of church history stuff. Even they will say that they weren't in a separate cult, that this is a subculture that thrives in the church because of the way the church is doctrine, because of just kind of the founding of the church and all throughout, like this I'm trying to think of like the environment, or I'm not quite sure, but
It's like saying that the FLDS has no connections to Mormonism. That's
right.
a subculture too. And yes, they have branched off and become their own thing. And yes, I do consider them a cult, but it's all a subculture of mainstream Mormonism.
Well, and I almost sometimes, not the FLDS,
Right.
not the FLDS, not the horrible abusive Mormons like the Kingston clan, all of those.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about them, but there are like independent polygamists, or I think UAB is more mild. I have friends that were in those polygamous communities, or just I almost sometimes have more respect because they follow the Book of Mormon. Like they follow section 132. And the disagreement is that the church, when Utah wanted to become a state, said, oh no, that's we're not going to do that. That's bad. And the polygamists were like, well, no, that's our doctrine. That's in our scriptures. That's what Joseph Smith said. We're going to follow that. You've gone away from that. If you like get away from it, or if you deny it. And so I almost sometimes am like, well, they're the ones actually following what is in the Doctrine and Covenants.
I agree. I think, when it comes down to polygamy, I have no problem with it. Legalize it. As long as it's among consenting adults. I draw the line when they indoctrinate 12 and 13-year-olds into it. But legalize it. As long as it's between consenting adults, have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I do have a lot of respect for people that stick to their morals like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny though, because I remember like the Browns, like sister wives.
Yeah.
When they were like, we're going to be prosecuted in Utah. And they were like, that first season, they were like, we have to leave. We have to move. We have to go to Vegas. I was like, bullshit.
No,
like
we
have lawmakers who are probably polygamous, or at least very friendly because they take money from polygamous groups. Like, you are never going to be arrested and tried for polygamy, dude.
Well, first of all, what crime are they really breaking? Because I can't say that they're all legally, by Utah state law, married to their husband. I'm sure one of them is, and then everyone else is probably married in a religious ceremony. It's not really a legal ceremony. So it's just a husband and wife living with 3 roommates by legal standards.
Right. And I can't remember if because it was like a bigamy law, and I can't remember if it said like cohabitation.
Yeah.
Because I know that like when you get divorced, if you move in with someone, like they'll say basically you're married if you cohabitate. So I don't know if maybe it had something like that in it, but they've changed it since then. And there's no way the Browns were ever going to be arrested and persecuted. And because I could point down the street at a polygamous house. I can freaking pull them out of nowhere, because you can always tell when it's a polygamist, because they always have like a weird U-shaped house, or like a house with 2 entrances, or it looks like
because it's sectioned off between this wife and her kids and this wife and her kids.
Yeah, you can always tell. It's like, oh, polygamous. And
or like on Big Love, where they all had 3 houses that backed up to the same backyard.
Yeah. The exception is the Kingston group, because they put their wives in, they have their wives live in poverty, and they just kind of scatter them. And that's really sad. The Kingston clan is really, or group, I guess, is what happens.
They own a bunch of hardware stores.
Yeah, because it's just that the men that get the money.
And so they just let their wives and kids starve.
Yeah, they bleed the beast. I don't know if that's a biblical term or a Mormon term.
I don't think I've ever heard that. So that must be
and this is, I would say, I know some Mormons that do this, and which is because the government is so evil, we can take advantage of them. So they put their wives in these separate,
welfare.
The fraud. That's why they do it. They feel like they are entitled to do it because the government is so evil. And so
you see that in the quiverful movement among the Protestants, where you have it's not polygamy, but it's like one husband, one wife, and they have a slew of children. And they don't all live like the Duggars.
Right.
Most of them are in poverty because usually the women don't work, so it's just the man. And how is a plumber supposed to support 18 children?
Right.
Really. So a lot of them are on welfare and public assistance and stuff like that. So you see a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's definitely polygamy, definitely the Kingstons. They've been caught doing that. I don't think they ever serve time though. They get caught for stuff and like they never serve time.
Well, then that's proof that they're not, of course, they're not legally married to these women, because they're not going to get, single women with children get more benefits than a married woman. So that's obvious proof that they're not actually married to these women legally.
Right. Yeah. And it's a problem, but they have no problem doing it, which I've always thought that was weird. I always feel like people that complain about the government most are usually more
the ones that are using it the most.
Yeah. I'm like, well, your check would kind of disappear if we really did what you want to do. But yeah. So it's kind of a interesting climate right now.
Yeah. I'm just I don't want to discuss any politics at all anymore on my channel, because it's just too divisive and it's too dark. And
I made one joke and I was like, oh, can't do that again.
I mean, I've had enough discussions that people know where I stand, but I'm not going to throw it at people's faces, because you end up dividing people. And I'm there to entertain and inform about interesting subjects that I find interesting, and I hope other people do too. And that's my main gig. And if I can make you laugh while I do it, that's even better.
Yeah. I make a joke about, I can make one about Obama, I can make one about Biden, I can make one about Trump. I made one about Trump that I thought was fairly innocuous, and people flipped their shit. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, I didn't say anything like what other people say. I was just making like a light joke. Nobody has a sense of humor.
No, I've made fun of all politicians. So it's like, because they're all just that, they're politicians. Right,
exactly. They're all there has to be some level of narcissism or some level of arrogance to run for office.
When you realize that 99.9% of them don't give a flying flip about you or me, you're free.
Yeah.
And yes, inflation and everything's bad right now. Okay. But really, what happens with Joe Biden doesn't really affect my daily life. I'm more concerned with what's happening in my town and my state and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I got it. I hold my tongue a lot.
Yeah. Same. But I have enjoyed this conversation, and I hope everybody's learned a little something about MLMs. And we always get off onto the most interesting tangents.
I know. I'm like, you're going to have a lot to edit out.
Oh no, we've said nothing wrong. I'm putting it all out there. I'm just going to say a conversation with the 𝐼𝐬.
Yeah. So. We've been off a few tangents, which is so me. So but thanks for inviting me. And
anytime. I really enjoy collabing with you. And everyone, I'll see you again soon with another true crime video. Until next time.
All right. Bye.
Keto and Crime out.